Welcome back. Man, I have been looking forward to this interview for a while. While we typically focus on the technical aspects of the power industry, and while Tom definitely has the technical chops, we decided to focus on workforce development, as it continues to be one of the major pain points that we're seeing throughout the power industry. Joining us today is Tom Sandri, a staple of the NETA world, who is currently serving as the Director of Workforce Development at Vector Power. Tom's career spans 30 years with roles in training in sales, field service, product management, operations, and engineering, with stints at some of the most well-known institutions in the industry, including Philadelphia Electric, Megger, ProTech, Shermco, and now with Vector Power. He is also an active member of NETA and won the prestigious NETA Alliance Recognition Award for 2024 at the NETA Power Test event. Tom, thanks so much for taking time away from your jam-packed schedule to chat with little old me. For our audience, this is definitely one busy man. Can you tell our audience a bit more about yourself, Tom?
Absolutely, and it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on your show here. And yeah, I guess a little bit more on me. You know, obviously, as you mentioned, started my career off at Philadelphia Electric, working in the field between substations, and then for the last half of the career, very heavy on the underground residential distribution aspects. And it was kind of interesting because, you know, you kind of pointed out I have been in the industry for some time. And just as a little known fact, my supervisor back in the days at Philadelphia Electric, some of you might have known him or heard of him. He was a gentleman by the name of Ben Franklin. I remember the day he asked me, "Hey, kid, can you hold this kite string for me?"
The gray in the beard is very regal, Tom. So I'm with you. I'm feeling that way. I think I sailed back in the day with like Halsey and Nimitz back then. So I'm kind of feeling that. That is truly impressive, Tom, man. And I know your time is extremely valuable. So let's go ahead and dive right into the question set here. So you have a passion for training. Your work history definitely shows that. What drove you particularly to workforce development and training?
I think probably the best answer to that, what drove me into the training aspect, I have an even stronger passion and desire for learning and researching. So I was always one of those field guys that always wanted to know the why and how. So no matter what the task and everything, you know, I would always be researching deeper and deeper into the subject. And obviously, the more I learned and so forth, I found, you know, I was also probably that annoying guy that you worked next to on the job that every time you were doing something, I had to build upon. Hey, do you know why we're doing this and how this? And you know, oh, I'm noticing that this cable is using ethylene propylene rubber. Did you know that this was first formed back in da-da-da? So I guess I started off as the tailgate trainer, and it just kind of grew from there. But I do find, you know, I love working in the field. I love working, you know, hand in hand with the technicians and everything. But I think the gratification that I get out of the training, you know, obviously we all love monetary and so forth because we have, you know, mortgages and everything to pay. But I think the workforce development and the training, for me, it's very, very fulfilling because when you hear from the individual say, man, finally, I actually understand it. You've actually explained it in a manner that I actually get it. Thank you. I mean, your chest just flares out. I mean, there's no greater reward.
Agreed. It's like watching that light bulb or that aha moment, you know, and that it really is it is so fulfilling from a mentorship perspective. And I wish more folks would kind of take that on, you know, and kind of deal with that. So I couldn't agree with you more, man. And I think that's as valid a reason to get into it as any. So definitely couldn't agree more. And then, so obviously training and keeping techs engaged and furthering their knowledge is definitely not an easy task by any stretch of the imagination. What are some of the things that you have found that kind of help keep technicians engaged?
Actually, I will say the best level of engagement is when your whole company is behind it, and the culture of your organization is built on learning, growing, advancing. Now, there are other things that you can do, if the company culture is not quite to that level,
Of course.
but it becomes a little bit more of a struggle because it's hard to engage an individual, particularly, look at the life of a lot of the technicians out there, the NETA technicians. They're working long hours.
Absolutely.
They're on the road. They get back to a hotel room. Gosh, I can go out, have a beer with my buddies and a steak, or, I can do some training. Now, if your supervisor, if his manager and so forth kind of have this attitude like, okay, guys, workforce development or our environmental health and safety group wants us to do this training, just go get it out of the way. To you, when you see that response, they don't seem to have a value to it.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I have a value to it at that point? The message to me is it's a waste of my supervisor's time. It must be a waste of my time. When we lead with the why we're doing it, and we genuinely show that we are interested in those technicians, we are interested in their careers. We want to see them grow. We want to see them earn more. We want to see them be more value to the company and to their families.
Absolutely.
That's really, I think, where we start to get the motivation, and the workforce development machine all starts to click, and we are able to make some forward progress. But it really starts with that culture and the understanding the why.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes, I'll be perfectly honest with the technicians. It's like, look, we got to go through this course. I know it's not going to be very exciting, but we need to do it for compliancy. We need to do it for, and at that point, okay, we understand why we're doing this. I'm going to make it as painless as possible, and I'm going to try to keep it as relevant as possible. That's the other big aspect of it, is keep it relevant. When you do training on something, and the individual is like, well, I don't do that. I've never been asked to do that, and I don't even foresee me getting involved in that anytime soon.
Right.
Why am I taking this block of my life away? So the culture, let them know you care, let them know the reasons why, and keep it relevant.
I wholly agree, and I'm actually reading Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin right now. Again, this is like my third go through it, but that culture aspect, and then the accountability or ownership across, and
Yes.
really, and there's thousands of ways to incentivize this kind of stuff, you know what I mean? But with that being said, if you can truly get them to buy into the ownership, and then trying to make it relevant to them, even beyond the compliance aspects, it's like typically, or the saying that we had in the Navy was, everything is written in blood. It's typically come about from some bad thing or something, hence, or why would you regulate it? And so making it more of a personal outreach, and really showing the impact it can have in their lives, and really allowing the opportunity for them to assume ownership of that, seems to be, very, very beneficial as well. And it sounds like you kind of align with that as a thought process and trying to make that stuff work as well.
Absolutely.
Now with, this generation is lived with phones in their hands since dang near birth. We're doing better about keeping our youngins off of them as much as possible. But in the digital age today, many of us are in fact tied to these phones. And I know I, for one, definitely find myself living on LinkedIn every day. And you and I discussed multi-platform learning prior to hopping on this interview. What are some of the ways you're meeting employees in the digital space to make training more digestible and accessible?
Well, kind of as you mentioned, there are numerous paths to training. You obviously have the traditional in-person classroom. very personal with the interactions, the camaraderie, and so forth. Nowadays, due to a lot of these companies really being more global or expanded into large geographic regions, and to be perfectly frank, the pandemic has really accelerated us a lot into this area of the virtual classroom. Again, we still have the dynamics of live interactions, chat functions, and so forth. How you run those classes, though, are considerably different than truly in person in a classroom, where I can kind of walk up behind you, give you a little slap on the back of your head to wake you back up.
Throw the eraser across the room type thing.
Yeah, exactly. There's different tricks and techniques that you learn for the virtual classroom. And then, we have the world of self-study, where we put out training modules. You can access them anywhere you have Wi-Fi capability, either on your PC, your tablet, or there are phone apps where you can access into the material. And the nicety about this is it makes it, I look at these as more micro-learning sessions, because again, if you're going to be taking this, while you're waiting 45 minutes for your badge clearance to clear and get into the front gate, you can be sitting in the front seat of your truck, on your tablet or on your phone, and taking a little micro-learning course and so forth. So those are really nice. The only thing that I don't like about the micro-learning and the self-study, the way I've seen it implemented in numerous places, is in some ways I call it throw it over the fence training. Here, take this training and I hope you learn something. If you get questions and answers, figure them out. So I modified a little bit where when we do that style of self-study, on your course page, there's a link to the instructor calendars, and you can schedule, a personal one-on-one questions and answer session with the instructor. So take the course at your convenience, at your busy schedule, but know that you can have human interaction and true questions and answers, so that you don't have to figure out the ending of the story. You can, converse with it. So those are some of the ways, particularly for today's generation. I mean, I've done everything from the webinars, posting the webinars out on YouTube to make them available, the self-study courses, the virtual classrooms, just taking advantage of technology. And it is interesting. The new generation seems to adapt pretty well to that. Mm-hmm. A little side story, and I find interesting about this new generation. In one of the courses that I teach on electrical safety, we go through a risk analysis process. And in it, I use an example of changing the tire on an automobile. So the critical step, we're going to jack the vehicle up. The hazard, obviously, the vehicle can fall down uncontrolled. So how do we control this? And I said, looking at the hierarchy of risk controls, let's focus on awareness. What is an awareness technique that you can use that would make you better prepared for this step? And older gentlemen, like gray, in the beard,
us.
Me.
You could say it, it's us.
Yeah. I mean, we would answer, go into the glove box and get the user's manual. The user's manual will tell you where the jack is. It'll probably tell you how to assemble it. It'll show some form of an undercarriage drawing or whatever, where the jack placement points are. Well, that works for us gray hairs. For the modern generation, the number one answer to that question of awareness, go to YouTube and watch a video.
And I've been fortunate. Like I said, I've got the gray hairs working. A lot of that's from military stuff, but like I use more of a hybrid approach. And man, like I rebuilt a little dirt bike motor, a little 80cc thing, just watching YouTube videos, and watched how to tear down the head and rebuild the piston and check the crank and all that other fun stuff. And lo and behold, we got the crank in the middle of the night at like 3 a.m. one night. So it works, but it's definitely more of a hybrid approach with that kind of stuff. And then with that kind of in mind, I know that techs are always on, they're in the field, they're on the go. and we kind of address some of those hurdles that you're facing. But have you found any solutions like gamification or
Yes.
incentives or anything like that that kind of play into that?
Well, gamification definitely. Again, the modern generation, they're used to gaming structures. So even on the self studies and so forth, put in some interactions. Where they've got to click and drag and do some different things. So bring in a little bit of that gamification, bring in some interactions for them. Other little techniques that I do is I try to, even in those self-study courses, bring in a little bit of the environment of a classroom. So, we have these like little avatars, up in the corner is the instructor. As they're speaking, you get the little balloon pop up. So those that like to read along can do so.
Right.
But what I do, like when I'm doing a thought transition, what I'll do is I'll actually have another avatar representing a student pop up and say, oh, that's a very interesting point, but can that technology also do? And
Excellent.
now we're breaking up the monotony of listening to one voice droning on and on and on. Right. Visually, you're being stimulated because you're getting these different pop-ups and interactions. On some of the trainings, I'll actually bring up another student where the two students start talking amongst themselves or arguing a point. And again, all I'm trying to do there is, I hate to say, putting in entertainment value to hold the learner's attention.
Well, and I can see the value because, I mean, everybody, like I said, if you're on Facebook or anything like that, we have behavioral scientists and psychiatrists that are literally building in dopamine hits. That's what keeps you connected to that little device, And then the other thing is, I think we're kind of all in this mindset of consuming stuff in little 2 to 3 minute clips. And so our attention spans, and this is just my humble opinion, I don't have any scientific data other than personal lived experiences, but it just seems like that's how we digest things like that these days, is in those little micro clips and doing it. So to add in those little transitions and to gamify it, and heck, maybe even introducing a little combativeness between the student and the instructor to kind of recenter focus and things like that, And to me, that's really playing into what, the metas and the Instagrams and the TikToks and all that, and kind of really meeting the students or, the field service techs, per se students, right, in the middle, and really trying to drive that. And that's why I find the technical workforce development and the training and the learning aspects, it's like, what are we doing to kind of take what's boring and then really translate it into something that can be, that has some entertainment value. I think you hit the nail on the head by giving the, I'm one of those weird ones. I like to have like the closed captions at the bottom of everything. Yeah. Because it's just another method of consuming with this big complex thing between our ears. So anything that you can kind of do to kind of capitalize on all those aspects makes sense to me.
Exactly. Because you have the visual learners. So we definitely try to incorporate, some video, animated graphics, imagery. So the visual learner can kind of picture this in their mind. The more engineering type people, they love the closed caption and the read along and everything on it. But again, it's that stimulation of keeping these different elements going, just to hold the level of attention. Now, the one point that I do want to make about the online and the micro learnings and self-studies and so forth, I think a mistake that some organizations make is they look at training as a this or a that. And it's, you cannot build a successful workforce development methodology if you adopt only micro learning modules. Oh, we don't have to do classrooms anymore. All our guys can stay billable. They just take all these online courses. No. There's a purpose and use that I use them for. One, being an instructor doing in classroom trainings, one of the things that's always a huge challenge to an instructor is I've got this side of the room that are completely green and new to the subject matter. I got these guys that have been out in the field for a while. They've got a pretty good level of knowledge. Now, I've got to try to construct this class so I don't speak over the heads of these people and bore these people. by introducing them first onto the micro learning modules, I can level the playing field a little bit. So by the time, we do make that investment of bringing you into a classroom, and let's face it, this is an investment that our companies make.
Absolutely.
It costs money in travel, per diems, rental cars, airline. I mean, there's money to be spent there. So we want to make sure we get the best bang for the dollar and protect that investment. The micro learnings ahead of time helps level the field when they come in. You've been introduced to enough subject matter that now you can actually bring up and articulate some better questions than when you're totally green. And the other thing is, I look at the micro learning as a protection on the training investment, because whether you went for to one of the training institutes out there, or your company did this in-house, it's still a big investment. And let's say that, the subject was transformers. And as luck has it, we don't have any jobs over the next 30 days where I could get out there and put to practice my knowledge. Well, little fact of the learning process, if you don't apply and do anything with the knowledge that you've learned, after about 30 days, you forgot about 80% of the content.
Absolutely.
So the micro learning also just helps to protect the investments that you're making in your workers by keeping the information up at the foremost of their mind and keeping it fresh.
Now, here's a question on that. Now, do you guys, and it may be a logistical nightmare to try to do it, but are there any efforts to have the micro learning and then have it reinforced via on-site work? That way they're getting it, and perhaps a feedback loop of mentorship. Is that a consideration that's taken?
Oh my goodness, you knocked that one right out of the park. Yes. Before you launch this type of a program, again, I go back to, it's a company effort.
Absolutely.
So part of that is you want to go ahead and get buy-in at all the different levels in the organization.
Absolutely.
So part of that buy-in and everything is also making sure that your frontline leaders, your supervisors, managers, we basically do train the trainers.
Absolutely.
Okay. So everybody's on board with what the lessons are, what these students are going to be learning. And now what we want to do is we want to reinforce it when they get out onto the job site. So again, if the supervisor, if the crew leader knows what the curriculum was all about and what they're learning, now they can go ahead and say, oh, hey, Bobby, come on over here. I understand you just went ahead and took the cable diagnostics course. Why don't you join up over here? We're going to be doing some cable testing. Wow. Here are some tasks that I want to, see you go through, or, make sure that you fully understand. I mean, let's face it, lab time is called billable hours.
Absolutely.
We have a lot of apparatus at our exposure, particularly on big plant outages. Hey, we got 300 breakers to go ahead and test. Boy, I've got a lot of lab time now to put into practice what I just learned in my learning courses. But absolutely, the supervisors, the crew leaders, the frontline leaders, they all need to be in tune with what we're doing here and reinforce it in the field and make sure that those assignments are given. They do a checklist saying, yes, I witnessed Bobby doing it. He did it, very well. So now what we've done is we've transcended from the course allowing you to absorb knowledge, and now we have a skills development sign off of showing how you were able to implement the knowledge.
Beautiful. And I've had a couple of offline conversations. I just did a transition assistance program course with some Navy executives that were getting out yesterday. And one of the talks that we came up with, and I think is missed by a lot of the folks in the power industry, is, my co-presenter there is basically that you are typically hired on, and there's not necessarily, or hasn't historically been a massive focus on workforce development, or at least that's the rudimentary and fundamental levels that we're seeing here. And vice what we had in the Navy, we had what was called personal qualification standards, and you had a book, and it had, thousands upon thousands of little thou shalt go stand a port watch or a starboard watch or walk the engine rooms or whatever it may be. And you were actually trained, and trained very systematically to kind of get there. And I think that was one of the things that the Navy definitely got right, was and I mean, to the point to where it was ad nauseum. You would get tired of training, you know, and it's like, oh my God, here we go again. And we're doing X, Y, and Z drills. And of course, they don't really have the CapEx to worry about as much in the military, right? It's to the tunes of trillions there. But, and so it just having the buy-in across the organization and making sure that everybody understands the fundamental importance, and make sure it is systemic throughout the organization, or you're just not going to get there. And again, I couldn't imagine trying to be a new startup, you know, and saying, okay, we're going to train our guys and we're going to get this done. Just the amount of money and the expenditure, and, you know, even if you're using third parties and things like that, there's another expenditure by just flying them out on site. So what you're doing is definitely a monumental undertaking, and I can only imagine the stress levels that are induced by trying to make sure everybody is tracking, and then, you know, all the various components of just tracking the certifications and the progress and all that. We had a guy kind of much like you guys do that was developed, you know, for 300 people, not 1,600 people. That was his full-time job, was just doing that with, you know, divisional level trainers as well that had to do that. So kudos to you guys, man.
Well, definitely to reduce some of that stress, you know, one of the investments is in a good learning management system, you know, because now tracking certificates, skill levels, particularly, you know, if you know, like on badges and certs and so forth, you know, if these are things that need to be done annually, bi-yearly, you know, they could go ahead and track when something's about to, you know, become due for renewal and so forth, and just makes your life just so much easier. So, you know, investment or having access to a good learning management system definitely will help reduce a lot of that stress level.
And this is one, and I don't know if it's proprietary or anything. I know it's off the question set a little bit, but are there any LMS products that you would recommend for the small business owner or anybody like that are out there?
Absolutely. I mean, I've gone and I've seen, you know, numerous ones. I mean, there's this one huge, beautiful program called Cornerstone.
Okay.
But I would probably steer smaller companies away from it. It's a very powerful. It'll do pretty much anything you can possibly dream and imagine in the world of learning management and so forth. But everything is kind of sold as a la carte type modules and so forth.
Gotcha.
So if you don't really have experience with this and really don't know what you want to do with it, you can spend a lot of money, you know, again, putting it into naval. You got a very, very powerful ship and you forgot to put the rudder on it.
Gotcha. No, totally makes sense.
The one that I like and I've used quite extensively is called LMS 365. Okay. The thing I love about this is most organizations probably are all Microsoft based. So they're using Microsoft Office, which has a lot of functionality. It's got your Outlook, it's got your Teams. If you do videos and so forth, you've got the Microsoft Stream. If you're doing polls, you know, or question banks and everything, you've got the Microsoft Forms. LMS 365 is part of that world. It just kind of sits on top of your LMS 365 just sits on top of your Office 365.
Gotcha.
That seamlessly integrates with all of it.
That's very cool.
So,
and the PowerPoint for display or for presentations and all that fun jazz.
Exactly. You can bring in media, whether it be the PowerPoints, the stream videos. If you do develop your own training modules in, you know, the industry, like SCORM compliant based modules, all of these play in the LMS 365, but it integrates with all of your Office 365 functionality. So the IT people also kind of give you a little like, thank you. Made our life easier as well.
We can fix this one. Yeah, it's not calling customer service.
We're keeping it all in our protected domain in the company, you know?
Right. That's important to some people. That speaks to job security stuff, right? So it's definitely a plus.
Yeah.
And now, is that program, is it fairly scalable? Is there like a limit? Would you say once you hit 300 employees, you would recommend switching over to the other product or a different product? or is it fairly
It's not so
scalable?
much the number of employees, because in LMS 365, you can start off, with the bare minimum 30-seat package. Very, very affordable. And anytime you have new headcount and so forth coming in, you can just go ahead and buy additional seats. So it's not so much the volume of seats per se. I would say it's probably going to go more into, are you going to expand into maybe e-commerce? Are you going to expand into maybe the world of virtual and augmented, and you've got to move into a new platform, for maybe some of those more advanced. So, but the seat count, and even the seat count, you buy, like, let's say you get 30 seats. But let's say that you have 50 technicians. Okay. You can have more technicians than you have seats. A seat is only claimed when the technician is actively enrolled in a course.
Gotcha.
Once they finish a course, that seat becomes available.
Okay, gotcha. So it's basically you can do 30 at a time and then cycle them through, so you don't need to necessarily purchase more seats. So that makes sense.
Right. So, I mean, for a smaller organization starting out and everything, you can get a lot of mileage without a lot of dollar out of the platform. And it's extremely intuitive and easy to set up, because pretty much all of your course pages, your landing pages and everything you go through, they're all, again, Microsoft. They're all based on Microsoft SharePoint.
Gotcha.
So setting up the structure to get your company look, feel, template and everything, you're not doing any type of advanced programming. It's pretty much just build it through SharePoint.
Very, very cool. No, and like I said, there's so much value, and I know there's 1,000 ways to skin that cat, if you will. And it's always good to kind of get feedback. Like I said, everything we did military-wise was all proprietary and internally developed, or they paid some company millions upon millions of dollars to do it. And so it's always good, because workforce development, again, is one of those things that, I think there's a higher focus being put on it now than perhaps previously, or at least in my humble opinion, is kind of what I'm seeing. So any of those kind of tools, and we're running into that where I'm talking to various clients or just folks that I'm having conversations with, they're getting ready to bring a lot of that stuff in-house if they haven't, just because of the cost of technicians these days. It seems like it's constantly going up. I've had techs turn down threes at turning down $60 to $65 rolls recently, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, you can only poach so many from so many, and you'll find the ones that are going to chase the dollar. And so now it's more like, if you don't do workforce development, you're just not going to get there. At least that's what I'm seeing, if that makes sense.
Well, from the competitive standpoint, and retaining your technicians, I have seen where companies that invest in training and offer their employees training opportunities, growth opportunities, have better retention.
Absolutely.
Because particularly like some of the younger NETA guys, going in, they just start to see, all right, I got my NETA 2. How am I going to get to this NETA level 3? What are my opportunities? Do I have to take this all on myself, or is the company helping me in some manner? Or, hey, I've got my NETA 3, I've got my NETA 4, but I also have my continuing technical development credits that I need to. Is this burden on me? Do I have to try to figure, and here's where like your micro learnings and so forth. I mean, it might only be a 1 hour session, only get you 1 CTD, or a 2 hour session, get you 2 CTDs. But if your organization is offering that, it's not coming out of my pocket. I'm maintaining my 24 or 48, depending upon whether I'm a 2, 3, or 4. So in a way, you can also sell that in your organization as this is an employee benefit to our NETA people. And we're providing a mechanism to help you study, learn, grow, and move up through the ranks.
Absolutely. And it does. And that's one of those things. We may hate going through the training, but ultimately, if you're benefiting that individual and helping them to aspire and achieve that next level of success and upward mobility, and like I've seen some companies that'll name will remain nameless, but like they have a very, very high emphasis on internal workforce development and training, and they don't have the best pay rates in the industry, but they're able to retain that talent because they're so employee centric. And that's one of our fundamental focuses, is that's who we want to represent whenever we're doing our staffing stuff, because it is self-serving in some aspects, because they're going to stay there longer. And so I don't have to worry about doing guarantee fulfillment and things like that, because you guys are treating them right. So that's an entering argument that I think is very, very valid. And it is definitely good to see more folks getting aligned with that. So
it goes back to that earlier statement, show the employee you care.
So huge. And I know you and I have kind of had that offline conversation. That specific aspect of life, I think COVID, and got you, like, the techs were still working and they were essential employees and all that. But just societally, it seems like a lot of people are now putting a much higher emphasis on that work-life balance and a fulfillment of life by just serving our corporates on high, or the providers of money. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I think it benefits society as a whole, and it, makes people more productive from that aspect. And that's just my humble opinion on everything. And so if you can really double down and really show the folks that you truly care, you're truly there to train, you value their family time and all those other things that weren't necessarily important even 5 years ago. It seems to me that like I said, that's my purview on it, and kind of what I'm seeing as I talk to the countless candidates that we talk to and everything else. That's what is really important to them these days, and so
yes.
Is that something you're seeing kind of from your lens as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And not just the field techs and everything, but definitely in the world of the field techs, if they are going to be on overhead and doing training, a lot of them really actually, appreciate the virtual classroom because they get to stay at home. All right. They might be sitting there, occupying the kitchen table, taking this course and everything, but they're at home, it's a relaxed environment and so forth. But for, as the family household and everything, the home officing, I think COVID has woken us up to, production does not fall, or productivity does not fall off. If you're running your company properly, where you don't have to be walking behind everybody with the whip and everything, but you've hired professionals, let them be professionals, give them their work assignments, give them reasonable deadlines, to turn in and show the progress, but let them do the work. The home officing, actually you will start to find that your production time starts to go up because, one, you've cut out the commuting hours.
Absolutely.
Also, the employee in a lot of cases is more relaxed and able to engulf into the work because you've saved them a bundle in childcare costs and so forth. And you, again, even though we're working in our home environments. So again, I remember during COVID, when my wife and I were both, home officing, when we would take breaks or have lunch and everything, I'm taking a break with my wife. We're taking a walk around the block. We're having lunch together. So it also helped bring the family and work-life balance back. Now, obviously, as a field tech, I don't think the client is going to upload their gear and move it to your house where we can work on it. So for a field tech, we still got to go out there. Right.
You have to actually go out on site, do the work, and it's different strokes for different folks, and everybody's kind of geared differently. And they're, and I just had a conversation this morning with a friend of mine about, kind of like that work-life balance. There's always going to be people that are wanting to go out and do that. They thrive on those kind of things. And to me, that's more of a talent alignment and figuring out what they want to do. And it kind of self-selects out. Those field techs know what they're doing and want to get out there and do it. But if you can kind of take away some of the logistical challenges elsewhere with the training and stuff, where you don't have to get them to home office all the time, or like you said, time up, make it digestible, make it, content created, and then center your culture around that, I think it serves everybody well.
Absolutely.
I love it. Now, so you have done a ton of training for many organizations. Do you have any favorite topics to teach? And if so, why? What drives that decision?
almost any topic, I will find some level of enjoyment and pleasure in the training, because again, a lot of it is the interaction with my students and so forth. But I will say some of the courses that I find most fulfilling. Apologize if you're getting some of that background on my dogs.
You'll hear mine in a minute anyway, man. It's dogs and all that. We're home officing, so this is kind of how that goes.
And the elementary school just let out, so they're walking with their lunch boxes and so forth, and the dogs are just saying, "Hey, any leftovers?"
Exactly.
But ones I get a lot of fulfillment out of, believe it or not, the safety courses, I really enjoy because the reward is an order of magnitude higher, because literally you could be saving an individual's life. In that. Again, though, I like to keep it relevant. So even though we're doing like NFPA 70E base, training and architecture and so forth, I'm not just reading out of the 70E booklet to you. I may read what the 70E says, but, then I'll stop and say, okay, let's put this into perspective. How do we use this technology in the field, or how do we, adhere to this rule in the field, and why are we doing it, and what would be the ramifications of not doing it? So again, at the end of the day, I want the student to take that lesson plan and reflect it into their work life, their daily life, and what it means to them.
Absolutely.
So I get a lot of personal fulfillment out of the safety courses. The other ones that I really enjoy, and I guess this one goes back to, again, my industry beginnings, working in underground residential distribution, a lot with medium voltage cabling. And gotcha. I'm of that generation where, if you remember back to the late 1980s and early 1990s, there was a lot of controversy in how we test medium voltage, particularly what we call extruded dielectric cables. Back in the day, DC testing was the bomb. Everybody did DC testing, hook a DC high pod up to it, leave it sit for 30 minutes, blah, blah, blah. And DC fell from grace. And then, this newer technology, very low frequency VLF came out into the market. Mm-hmm. And then, another big revelation was, partial discharge, which was used to back in the day. This was something that only manufacturers did in their big fancy laboratories, and or big investor-owned utilities and their laboratories were able to do. And now we're doing it in field application. So those are really fun courses, because again, I like to give a little bit of a history lesson to put into perspective just how dynamic this is, what we're doing now, and how did we get from here to here. Mm-hmm. So those are a lot of fun, those courses. Transformers, absolutely love, particularly when we get to the hands-on. I'm just a big kid. I like to climb and everything. It's like I'm racing them to the transformer to see who gets to climb on top first to hook up the leads and so forth. Is like, Mr. Sandri, is it my turn to do some hands-on? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, come on.
My bad. Yeah, get up here and turn these wrenches. Come on, buddy. I love it. And then I think it's really awesome that you kind of touched on the safety aspect, because that truly is extremely important. And do you find whenever you're trying to make it more relatable, and this really, the only reason it comes to mind is I had a conversation about safety specifically this morning with someone else, and like trying to make it applicable to their personal lives and the ramifications of not. So, and for me, it really is a perspective thing. It's like, okay, Jackwagon, if you are out here and you don't pay attention to the NFPA 70 and you get shocked, have you thought about the downstream effects of now you, if the OSHA investigation comes out and it determines that you were negligent in following the instruction, now you don't get that workers' comp benefit. Now you're not eligible for COBRA. You can't use any of this stuff, and now your kid can't go to college. Do you see? Is that right? Is that kind of part of the conversation to reinforce that mechanism?
Oh, absolutely. In the one section of the program that I teach, hazards of electricity, we go and we break down electrical shock. We break down arc flash. We break down arc blast, and how to assess the likelihood of these happening, truly understanding how boundaries like limited and restricted approaches were developed, and why they're based on voltage, understanding that shock boundaries and arc flash boundaries are independent of one another. One's protecting you from thermal energy, one's protecting you from current entering into your body.
Correct.
Or inducing to you. So we break it down that way as to, what are the injuries, the severity and depth. But then you'll always have the student in the classroom that just, well, it's never going to happen to me.
Right.
Mr. Sandri, you don't understand. If I unbutton my shirt right now, I have a blue T-shirt on with a big letter S on it. It's just never going to happen to me. So on the second part of that, I then go into, let's talk about the financial ramifications of a life-altering injury or a fatality. What does it mean in both the direct costs and indirect costs to your organization, as well as to your personal? And by breaking it down into that financial aspect, on the personal, okay, if it is a fatality, what just happened to your family? What happened to your significant other? And if you have children, what are they going through now? Picture their world. If it's a life altering, and you can't go back to work, or, you can't do what you used to do, what is your life now? And then when we look at the cost to the organization, okay, for all of you that have the Superman emblems on and it's never going to happen to you, why do you still want to be concerned about it? And why do you want to be your brother's keeper out there and make sure that the other guys are safe? Because when you look at the direct and indirect costs of just like a life-altering, literally one event can cost your organization, I believe the latest calculating in inflation and everything, these are like $5 to $6 million, between direct and indirect costs. So now I go back and say, how many of these can your organization sustain before they're out of business?
Absolutely.
Or their premiums have gone up so high, they can't afford to do business anymore, or they've lost all clientele because nobody wants to let the proverbial bull loose in the china shop.
Absolutely.
So if we're not getting the jobs, we don't need as many technicians. It's going to have an impact on you.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you anymore. And the safety is just one of those where I can remember being young and dumb and, thinking I was invincible. So I think we've all lived that existence in some way, shape, or form, riding motorcycles at, almost 200 miles an hour. That's not smart, Micah. But, I thought I was invincible. And that's kind of one of those things, unfortunately, made it through it. So I can imagine it being a little bit more of a struggle for the younger guns that are out there running and rocking and rolling and haven't really lived the impacts of life's bruises and all that other good stuff. So anything that kind of really just throws it in their face and says, no, jackwagon, this is why. I think it's hyper important.
I have empathy because, I was that person all the way up until probably my mid-30s. I was Bart Simpson after Lisa went ahead and wired the cupcake. I was the one that just kept going back.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted the cupcake,
Yeah, and you probably, like me, many nights just wonder, how am I still alive today? You know what I mean?
Yeah, my guardian angel aged a hell of a lot more than I did.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's flying around with like a half decrepit wing at this point. I definitely agree with you. And so kind of continuing on with this topic of safety, man, we all know electricity is a dangerous animal and safety as always has to be at the forefront. And in the Navy, we specifically address this with a program we called Operational Risk Management, or ORM for short. Much like working with electricity, dangerous effect to life, I'll give an example of refueling at sea. You have to get gas in the middle of the ocean. And it's one of those things where a Venturi effect can slam your ships together, but nonetheless, you still have to get gas or get ordnance or whatever you may do. So inevitably, working with electricity is much the same, right? You have to, there are going to be operational risk with what we do. Is that something that's kind of addressed as well? Do you guys have like a civilian variant of ORM What does that look like?
Yes.
Is it a matrix-based thing, or what does that look like?
Absolutely. We call it risk assessment.
Okay.
And in the risk assessment that I teach, you'll probably find similarities to your military. Obviously we start first by what is the scope of work that we're about to perform. We then take that scope of work and we start to break it down into the actual tasks that need to be performed in order to accomplish that work scope. At each task level, we'll then identify what are the hazards that are associated with this particular task. But let's take it a little bit deeper, because most times, when an individual thinks of a hazard associated with the task, they think of, hazard to personal health, personal safety. Yes, absolutely.
Part of it, yeah.
What is the risk and hazard to the equipment?
Mm-hmm.
What is the risk impact to the possible environment as a whole? Like if we shut down life support systems, or if we shut down critical ventilation, or we cause a massive leak, of oil or something along these lines. These have environmental impacts.
Right.
What is the impact to your organization's reputation? So as part of the assessment, we first, scope, task, hazard, impact of hazard, personal, equipment, environment, and reputation. Now, the next thing we look at is, okay, what is the probability of that hazard occurring?
Right.
Now, probability, there's a plethora of items that go into this. Okay, one, have I been trained?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have knowledge and experience? Number two, do I have a safe work practice in place? So even if, I don't have all of the experience, is there a safe work practice that, can help me navigate, the safe path of how to perform this? What is the condition of the equipment that I'm working on? What are the conditions of the day that I'm working in? Are they all supportive of what I'm doing, or are they, going to hamper and raise the likelihood of something going wrong? The other is we look at human error and the human factor. What is the overall mindset of the crew? Have we been working, 7, 12-hour days? On this big outage, and we're just exhausted.
Absolutely.
Now checking, we're exhausted. Okay, that's good. You acknowledged it, but what are you going to do about it?
Absolutely.
And in those, on that task, we might say, all right, well, what we're going to do is we're not going to muscle through. We're going to stop at that task. Everybody gets a mandatory 5 to 10 minute break. Go back to the truck, go back to the job trailer, enjoy your favorite beverage, listen to, one of your favorite tunes, have some social conversation, allow your brain to decompress, relax. Now we'll come back, we'll have a short safety briefing again to just re-establish our awareness to the task we're about to go embark upon, and then implement. So that is actually one of the largest modules in the 70E, or what I call Qualified Electrical Worker course that I train, is really understanding how to do the risk assessment and make it dynamic, not check boxes that I checked the box, I acknowledged, but I did nothing about it.
We addressed the ORM.
Right.
And now do you, so like one of our things, we address the probability, meaning, obviously what is the likelihood of something happening, and then the severity. And it sounds like you guys are doing a hybrid version of the probability and severity. We used to break it out at a metric, and we keep it simple, stupid in the Navy. Everything has to be dumbed down to the lowest common denominator. But we basically had a matrix, and it was a probability on one side, severity on the other, and basically you quantified, added up everything, and you can't argue, the facts in there. It's what it is, and these are the factors. This is how it contributes, and you kind of weigh the probability and severity, and then it either broke out as red, yellow, or green. Meaning, red, we still have to get it done because it's part of the operation.
Mm-hmm.
But what other implementable measures are we going to take? Are we going to assign additional safety supervisors? Are we going to, like you said, mandate
Right.
some downtime and to kind of address that? Because the show must go on, be it if it's an operation at sea or you guys out testing, 300 breakers in a day. There's still going to be some stuff, but in the end, the mission has to be accomplished. So it sounds like it's very, very similar in that aspect.
Very, very similar. We have, basically you've got the impact, you've got the probability, you come together and, I landed on a red box. That's an extreme hazard. Okay, what further controls can I put into place to try to take it from an extreme down to a moderate?
Yes. Yes.
So again, it's the thinking doesn't stop with, the arc flash is 8 cal. I'll just go ahead and put on a 8 cal or a category 2 suit. And no, it doesn't start with your PPE. PPE is the last thing you can consider, because if you did the mitigations correctly, man, you might be doing remote racking,
that was exactly what I was going to say.
Arc flash boundary, you don't even need PPE anymore.
Exactly. And I mean, it's not always feasible, right? You can't always do remote racking and all that. Some instances you're just not going to be able to. And that's where you're going to start considering the PPA implications and all that other good stuff. But again, it's just, I find that topic to be very salient, and not having the exposure outside of the military. It was just one of those things that was always a priority, always at the forefront. And it's great to hear that that's definitely something that's considered in the workforce development. I know not all companies and outfits are created equally, and so some may not be as robust. But again, all lessons are written in blood, and now it's kind of a requirement for the NFPA, if I'm not mistaken, and now they have to implement, correct?
Very much so.
Okay, so 100%, and I love that. And kind of shifting gears here a little bit back to the training topics, I always like to ask guests, just because AI is literally at the forefront of everybody's minds. I've asked about implications and test equipment. Everybody I've talked to has agreed wholeheartedly. It has no place in the test equipment. It's dumbing down technicians out in the field and making them button pushers, not focused on, the theory and the relevant aspects of it. So I think I kind of know the answer from that, but obviously it's a workforce development conversation. And even with the release of that new Apple Pro, where they're doing a lot more of the augmented reality stuff, is kind of becoming at the forefront of conversation. Are you seeing any of that kind of stuff, or do you have plans to implement?
Absolutely. I mean, AI, augmented reality, everything. I mean, the technology is there. And, technology in itself is wonderful, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's practical in all situations or necessarily warranted. Now, the automation in the test equipment, I do like that these OEMs are coming out with smarter and smarter instruments, because they do bring a level of consistency amongst all the field workers. But like when you come into my class for the hands-on, you're not going to get a 3-phase TTR. You're going to get a single-phase TTR, and you're going to demonstrate that you actually know how to run it on a 3-phase transformer and render proper results. And you're going to explain to me how the machine is working. How is it actually making those measurements? What is being performed under the hood? I want to see and understanding, because the problem with the automated instruments, as long as everything goes to script, you've got good data. Okay. If it doesn't go to script, how are you going to troubleshoot when you don't even know how the machine is working?
That's the sentiment that's always echoed. And so it sounds like you do make them apply the formulas and theories, like you said, with determining the step up or step down on a transformer or something like that. They need to understand the theory and fundamentals and the actual formulas that get you there.
You're going to do the calculations first, and then concur that the machine made the right calculations. Now, other aspects of AI and so forth, and virtual and augmented reality, there's been, I know, like in a lot of the big investor-owned companies that have really deep pockets and huge staff and budgets to put into this, they go in, you put on your, your headpiece and everything, and here I am, disconnecting a transformer bushing and this, that, and the other. You know what? Fantastic. great flash appeal. I don't have to invest in a big transformer and have you climbing on it and so forth. I can get this training, implement it. But I also look at diminishing returns.
Mm-hmm.
I look at what is the subject that we're trying to teach, and how critical is it to get that training module out and get that knowledge into the field, because my timeline in development just went up an order of magnitude. If everything is going to be high gamification and virtual reality headset and the whole 9 yards. And then the other aspect of it is, like, for instance, like racking a breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I put on the gloves, I have the headpiece, and I'm doing this. I have no tactical feeling.
Right.
I still am not going to trust you to rack a breaker because you haven't felt the tension points.
You don't feel it slowly getting more tense and then finally hitting the rack point. Yeah.
Now, what I do like about those scenarios is you can program in failure mechanisms. So if you do something wrong, you forget a step, all of a sudden you get this big flash in your headpiece, and it's like, oh, an arc flash just occurred, but you got no burns.
Right, right.
But you don't necessarily have to go the full extent of the full AI gear, because there's high cost in outfitting technicians with all of that gear when they come into a classroom. Right. You can still program in these conditions and so forth. Maybe it doesn't have the flashy sex appeal of the full AI gamification and everything. But it is something I actively look at. I'm actually starting to try to research and build a list of companies that specialize in this type of development. But what I found right now, in a lot of cases, I reach a point of diminishing returns.
Absolutely.
Where either now my program is going way too longer than it needs to, where, oh, great, I can have this done in 1 year, or I can build this, get the knowledge out there in 3 months.
Absolutely. Now, one thing that is kind of appealing to me, at least from a troubleshooting perspective, and there was a pilot program many years back before all this stuff was a fad nowadays, but I thought what would be really cool is to have the ability of a technician to, and you could probably just as easily do it with a cell phone or something like that, but if you're on site and having the video call and having a subject matter expert, like, out that has a real-time connection, can see what you're working on, walk through it with you, provide feedback, or you could access an AI-based module or something like that, that would kind of feed that and help assist where your wisdom or your knowledge is kind of lacking in a particular area. And there's some real-time facets of troubleshooting.
Yes.
That might be a very, very long-range future type thing. Don't know if anybody's doing it, but
I love that, because in augmented reality, I hold my phone up, over at the transformer. I point it toward the bushings or whatever, and all of a sudden, parts of my SOP, my standard operating procedures, come up on the screen. The other, you nailed it. I'm doing a lot of this right now, whether it's cool. FaceTime, which I guess is the Apple version. Yeah. I'm sure the Androids have their version of a FaceTime, but I do that with the technicians all the time. It's like, all right, let's switch this call over to FaceTime. Now, show me how you made your hookups. Show me how you, and a lot of times that bringing that visual to me, oh, I see why you're stumbling. Go over there to your ground lead. Right. Notice where you have it. Okay, you need to move it, or scrape that paint off. You're not making a good connection.
Exactly.
You can recognize those subtle little things. So absolutely, we're doing that right now. Like the FaceTime and whatever the Android version of FaceTime is, right. Just spectacular. Here again is, there's a good practical technology that brings your subject matter person into the field with the worker
in real time, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, like I said, and I know AI is making leaps and bounds and all that, but I could see very, in the not so distant future, a technician out on site with your Apple Pro headset on that, can see through, and it sees what kind of transformer you're working on, or you could look at the data plate and then boom, AI, digs up the references there and kind of makes that troubleshooting. So perhaps it's not a human to human at some point. Who knows how it's all going to turn out? But that's just kind of like looking in the future and kind of seeing that. And I don't think that particular application would really degrade text learning, because they're still getting the hands on and they're still having to turn the wrenches, and it's not necessarily the ease or, hey, my test set's broken. Apple Pro, show me the formulas that we have to do, or a ready reference or something like that. And to me, that seems like that would be very, very cool use of the technology. And then even Adam Straub and I had a conversation, and he's very anti putting it in the test equipment for the dumbing down of technicians and making the button pushers. But I lost my train of thought there for a second. But with like tracking degradations of transformers and stuff, as companies swap from different testing companies because they perhaps went with the lowest bidder or whatever, a lot of that residual data is just not available and it's not passed down. So how cool would it have to be, the ability to plug that into some sort of network, and it tracks from substation to substation or switch gear or whatever it may be. And now you have real-time access to the degradation factor of things and kind of have more historical data. And that's where AI would be really good for parsing some of that data and making it applicable from that aspect.
Absolutely.
I thought that was brilliant.
Absolutely. And then, from that aspect, now you can, like, all of your NETA tables can be brought into that. The tables and references in your IEEE guys can be brought into that, where that information is out there and available, but how many techs go back to the backseat of the truck, and open up the library?
Exactly.
Oh, I need a copy of IEEE 400.2 so I can go ahead and look at the figures of merit table for EPR.
Right, not going to happen.
Here, let me reach and grab that.
No, I couldn't agree more. And that's what excites me about looking forward and kind of looking at some of those really relevant tools. Like you said, not carrying around manuals. I know you can get everything on PDF, but trying to navigate a PDF on a tablet or a phone, good luck with that.
Right.
Where
Control
I can
F,
just enter,
baby. Control F is my favorite.
Control F is good, but how cool would it be to have a natural language search function? You could say, hey, pull up something, and you don't even have to get out of the gear, and then all of a sudden it's right there in front of you with whatever the may be. And that's a lot of wishful thinking. Could you imagine trying to wear one of those Apple Pro headsets on top of a transformer in West Texas heat? So, maybe as the tech goes, maybe it gets embedded into safety glasses in the future or something. You know what I mean? With a remote Bluetooth
another 10
module.
Years will be, basically just sticking a stem in your ear and downloading it.
Hey, if Elon Musk has his way with Neuralink, we're on our way there now. I think they just finished up the pilot. And what did the guy do for his first effort out? He's like, I was able to play this game for 24 hours. I'm like, good use of the tech, bud, type thing. But I mean, it is just crazy what we're seeing technologically, and it is just wild, man. And I know there's naysayers and all that, but definitely some really cool practical applications I could see coming down the pike,
Yeah, and I mean, it's like any new technology. It's just basically assessing the technology and step away from a moment from the wow factor and start looking at, what is the practicality of it?
Absolutely.
And how will I implement it? What are the costs associated with implementing it? But don't just dismiss the technology. I mean, we're in a tremendous day and age. I mean, remember back to our days when we actually went to this building called the library, and we had to learn the Dewey Decimal System in order to find the reference material that we needed. Now the kids just go click, 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 click. Bam! Instantaneous information. And there's pros and cons to that because, and in some ways are overloaded with too much information. So, that's the other thing is filters, so that we can bring it back down to practical and, okay, I gathered this much information. Let's filter down to what I actually need for this particular task or this particular thing I'm trying to accomplish.
Absolutely.
But even there, technology is helping us even, right now, even with those filters.
Absolutely. And to your point about Dewey Decimal System, my 8-year-old understands it. I refuse to let Dewey die. We go to the library. He has to go figure that stuff out. And we go to the book section and make him do the old hardback. just because there's something so authentic about that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I'm trying my damnedest to keep the dream alive, Tom.
Well, pretty soon it's going to be, we log into the virtual library.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Or it's going to be the technical advancements to where you can actually revisit the old school way of doing things. You can just do it from your couch. Who knows, man? That's some sci-fi type stuff. Now, brother, I know you've been doing this game for 30 plus years, and with time comes tons of wisdom and experiences. And knowing everything you know now, if you could go back 25 years and talk with your younger self, and this is geared towards our younger techs and kind of looking back and giving sage advice, what advice would you give to young Tom?
Oh, wow.
A loaded question, right?
Well, I think the thing that came with age was further developing my understanding, respect, and necessity for patience and balance in my life. Early Tom, and this is still a demon I face today. I do tend to be a workaholic, but I'm trying to find that balance between my personal life and my work life. Because that old saying, all work and no play makes Tommy a dull boy. I've been a dull person for a good many years. And developing patience, Rome is not built in a day. I remember, early on, the vision was so clear in my mind, and the stress that I would go under because it wasn't happening as fast as I wanted it to. So definitely, to the younger techs and everything, slow down, small bites. Don't try to consume too much because you're going to choke. You're going to burn out. Slow, moderate steps, whether it's trying to get from your, preparing for your NETA 2, your 3, your 4. Again, don't try to rush, because even if you do pass the test, how much of it are you even going to retain or be able to do anything with? It kind of reminds me of my, high school and college days where, you crammed the night before, you passed the exam, and no sooner you walked out of the classroom, you forgot everything, type of thing. So patience, build it in stride. Your brain does need decompression time. You'll find that your knowledge retention goes up when you allow your brain to relax. The other that I will say to a lot of young techs going out there, particularly first time, they're working for an active service company and they're getting a lot of overtime hours and everything, and they're just making money. You know what? You don't need the damn motorcycle, the jet boat, the big old fancy truck with the huge tires and this, that, and the other thing. Put some money in the damn bank, because there's going to come a time when you've just, all that money that you brought in and that was coming in from all that overtime and everything, your lifestyle has just adjusted itself to where you need every red cent. Now, if the overtime goes away, you're in dire straits, because you can't pay for all that fancy stuff that you felt you just need it now, for your gratification, and let's face it, we do age. That's something I'm learning and dealing with a lot right now. In my mind, I can still do a lot of things. I remember on one of the recent jobs that I was on, I got back to the hotel room at about 5:30 in the morning. I could not get my boots off. My feet were all swollen up and everything. Do you know that from the hotel room to the ice machine in an average hotel is typically about 47 paces, and the size ice bucket that they give you, in order to get enough ice into the basin of the tub, is going to take on average 55 trips.
And you know this from personal experience.
Oh yeah, that morning I sat on the toilet with my laptop computer on my lap while I'm doing my report, and my feet, still in my boots, were inside the tub soaking in ice water to get the swelling down so I can get my damn boots off.
Just get the damn things off.
So there will be a time when your body, so learn gain experience so that you don't always have to be out there breaking your back, you know.
And Tom, that is probably some of the most sage looking back advice that we've received. And I echo that as well, man. I still drive a 2008 Toyota Tundra. The wife's in a 2008. We could go out and buy new ones and take on debt, but I was able to retire at 44. You know what I mean? Like, by living the life and just having, I think what a lot of people miss, and everybody's wired different. Some are going to be materialistic, but to me, it's about buying my freedom of choice and having the bandwidth to do whatever the hell I want when I want to. Can't buy the big dollar plane right now, you know, and we're working on that, and we'll get there again. So I do have certain materialistic goals that are more passions and hobbies, but that is so salient and so applicable to so many people. You see it, it's wealth creep. It really is. You just continue to adjust and still take on debt and do all these things. And literally, it's funny. The guy I was talking to you right before this, I'll leave him nameless. You know who I'm talking about. But it's this internalized sense of urgency, and we do it to ourselves.
Yeah, like we were our own worst enemies.
It's so true. So couldn't have been more salient points. And to say that I 100% agree with you. I'm not quite as old as you. I'm rapidly getting there. Used to be able to go run 10 miles. Now it's rucking 4 at best. And even then I've got to ice the joints afterwards. So I can 100% live and relate to every piece of advice. So for young guys, you're hearing it from 2 people. That's your sample size. That's 100% accuracy.
And I'll be honest with you, at my age, if I'm running, at all, there's probably some pretty bad people behind me chasing me.
There may be some shots going down or something. Absolutely. I'm still trying to pretend I'm young sometimes, Tom. So that's just kind of how it works for me. And so those, like I said, fantastic freaking points. Young folks, I'm going to make it direct as possible. Listen to that part like 5 times because it is that freaking important. And your life becomes a much better place to be in. So couldn't agree with you more on that one, Tom. And we are getting ready to wrap this up. So do you have any final thoughts, parting words of wisdom, anything like that you'd like to pass along to everybody, be it entrepreneurs, be it the business owners, be it the technicians, be it the other workforce developers? Any parting words of wisdom or final thoughts?
Well, I guess, whether it's to the businesses, to the managers, the supervisors, or the field technicians, definitely understand the message and the meaning in finding balance. Again, we want billable hours. That's what make payroll and our companies grow, et cetera, but not at the cost of not getting the knowledge and information to our workers. Okay. The better trained your workforce is, the safer they're going to be. There is a direct correlation. The more they understand the why behind what they're doing, again, the safer they're going to be out there. And the dollars will come. If you have a highly trained, knowledgeable workforce, you're going to find larger and deeper contracts. You're going to have a larger following of clients and client loyalty. And I understand getting that balance because nobody wants to turn down a job because we don't have technicians to put on it. Right. But again, if you're a large organization with multiple regions, all right, maybe, the Dallas region, they're due for some training. We got to get, we got to bring some workers in from the Arizona. We might take a little bit less profit, in the Dallas profit center, but I've got my people trained. We're going to make that money up tenfold. Okay. Don't be afraid to, and it's not pick one or the other. Don't be afraid to implement all the aspects of learning. Set up bulletin boards on your internet and everything for peer-to-peer learning. Absolutely. Hey, you just overcame an obstacle, post it on the bulletin board. Now 3 other regions just don't have to step on that landmine. They learn from one another. Utilize your, self-study based courses. Utilize your virtual classrooms. Don't throw away your physical classrooms, but we have means of protecting that investment, through the other mechanisms of learning. And really, you need the corporate buy-in. I mean, you can do it without corporate buy-in, but it's going to be a lot more stressful, a lot more struggle, and you're not going to get to the mountain peak as quickly as if you have the support of your corporate officers.
100%. And I think we echoed the sentiment earlier, but the culture aspect is literally something that maintains and retains that loyalty. And, you know, and then your finished product is so much better. And retention is one of the biggest pitfalls we're seeing for folks right now. And if you don't do that, you're going to pay the price. And understand it's a cost center. Totally understand that. But it is a cost center that's worth pursuing for the macro picture of your company. And that, so again, another bombshell by Tom Sandri here today. And, or at least in my opinion, some, you know, we're always going to have naysayers in the comments or whatever. Be like, damn it, work them to death. But, you know, but,
crack that whip.
But no, man, I couldn't agree with you more. And I knew this was going to be an absolutely amazing interview, and it has been. It's exceeded every expectation I had for it. And thank you so much, so freaking much for your time. And for anybody that wants to find you, I'm assuming you're like me, you don't mind sharing knowledge, and I know you're tied up. But where are some places folks can reach out to you if they have questions about it, be it the owners or the operators or whoever it may be?
Oh, absolutely. I guess we'll just start with the obvious. You know, my work email address, T Sandri, Sandri, at Vector Powers, and it's VECTORPWRS.com. So feel free to email me. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You know, just go to the search, Tom Sandri. You know, I pop up pretty quickly on LinkedIn. You'll find me on YouTube. You know, and again, it doesn't matter who you are or who you work for. I correspond, and you know, people call me. Now, if it's a large project where, you know, there's consulting hours and everything that need to be involved in it, okay, yes, obviously,
of course,
you know, I've got to pay bills, but you know, I take phone calls from numerous technicians across many different companies that, hey, I know you have a lot of experience in this area. I'm struggling with this or that. You know, can you help me out? Mm-hmm. You know, those little 15, 30-minute, you know, conversations and everything. Oh, I absolutely love them. It keeps me fresh out there networking. I'll be honest with you. I also love it on another thing is because, you know, as a trainer and a developer, I can either develop training material that I think is cool, or I can take notes when people are calling me and everything. Absolutely. And I see what are the struggles that are out there, and
real-time data points are kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
No, and that is one thing that is just so amazing, and I'm sure it exists in other industries. Obviously, we work in the power industry, and that's what we're seeing. But even across the other guests that I've spoken to, and I mean, there's been several, but just having that network of people where you can call and count on and really work together. And I think that's one of the primary ways that we're sharing, or you guys more so than me. I'm just the recruiter guy. But you guys, well, and we share content like this, which I guess is kind of cool. Yeah. But you guys, that's your way of passing on your wisdom to the next generation. And so that's one of those, my last takeaway, and I promise I'll let you get back to life. But like, utilize these guys that have been out there doing this stuff. Young field folks, don't be afraid. Send the connection request. Build the rapport. Build meaningful relationships. Ask the stupid questions, because if they're stupid to you, it's still a question, and it's only, you know, you have to ask, and it'll only reinforce the knowledge. And then hopefully whenever they become those old salty crusty guys like we are, they will do the same thing, and that really allows the generations to continue on. So
exactly,
truly love that aspect of what I've seen with the guests that we've had on, and I've had conversations with.
Oh, you've had some great guests. Well, I've been watching you, you know, quite religiously on LinkedIn. You've had some really good
Don't
guests.
Give me a big head, Tom. And like I said, this will also we just dropped the podcast April 1st, and this will be released there. So I'm like I said, it's to me, if everybody do their part, everybody would, spread the knowledge. And I've worked with some folks in the past. Like, it's like, not everything is competition. You don't have to kill everything.
No.
Like, share the knowledge. There's room at the table for everybody to eat. And if we would all kind of adapt that, and I got it, you have to have silos of competition, but
here's another
knowledge.
Statement that I'll put out there to the business owners and everything out there. Okay. Particularly for all of the NETA family. Okay. The more we help one another and make sure that our techs are doing it correctly, they're living up to the client's expectations, the cost of sale goes down. Because the problem that you have is when people are out there doing it wrong and giving the technology a bad reputation, because the client, they just walk away, well, oh, that tech seemed to know what he was doing. He talked a good game, but,
right.
Wow, that technology is garbage and didn't do me any benefit whatsoever.
Right.
Now our cost of business goes up because trying to sell that technology just became 10 times harder. You have to overcome that obstacle. So if we share our knowledge, we're all doing a fine job, and there's enough business out there for us all.
More than enough, I would say, at this injecture, or this point, there's so freaking much business out there.
Oh, exactly. We preserve the good reputation and name of the NETA organization, which goes ahead and makes it easier for us to go ahead and find work and have credibility. So again, sharing the knowledge is not a bad thing. We don't work for the CIA. We don't have
Right.
ancient Chinese secrets that we have to preserve and so forth. But we want to make sure that the clients are getting what they want to their expectations. They're getting value. They see the NETA organization as a value. So anytime, and again, this is not just NETA organization. Those of you that might be, certified through NICID or other organizations, again, when we do it right, all of the cost of sales for all of us, are controlled because we don't have to go and fight the obstacle that the technology is rubbish and why do I even want to do this?
Right. And from a macro, the industry reputation is very, very important as well, because like you said, it's the cost of the sale and the cost of the business of doing it that way. And if everybody would kind of embrace that, then all of a sudden now NETA becomes more reputable just through the actions of every organization. And specifically what I'm seeing in the NETA, with there only being, there's more than a handful of third-party testing companies that are NETA accredited, but this is a very, very niche industry with only, a very small sample size of companies. And so the actions of one company are going to have a ripple effect through. And not only that, your reputation precedes you and throughout the industry. So your techs, if you aren't doing the sharing of the wisdom, they're going to avoid you. I see it all the time. I get candidates will say, I'm not going to go to work for X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z. And
right.
Or even from a tech perspective, I get a candidate that's a NETA 3. All I've got to do is make a couple, I almost cussed there and I didn't, but I've got to make a couple of phone calls and I can get the answers I'm looking for. You know what I mean? It's not hard.
Right.
Like, every technician is tied to somebody in this industry, and there's such a small ecosphere of people. So if you're not doing it right, you're going to get found out anyway. So that's what I'm seeing from my lens anyway.
The other, closing, don't be afraid to share your knowledge. There was this old school mindset of keep it all within because it's going to make me more valuable. Share your knowledge. You want to be valuable to your organization? You want to be recognized as being valuable in your organization? Share your knowledge.
100%.
Show how you can go ahead and raise the entire workforce instead of just you as an individual.
Absolutely.
That's where you truly become valuable, and the world's your oyster.
I couldn't agree with that statement more. So sage advice throughout for anybody, and I know this is at the very end of it, but truly phenomenal stuff, Tom. And again, thank you. You bought literally 30 years of trade goodness to the table, and I couldn't agree with you more. And it's always fun to talk with older guests that have lived the experiences and done it. And I'm not knocking your age, because like I said, I've got it here too. But you guys bring such a unique perspective to the table and are able to pass it along. And I think it only furthers the future of the industry. So again, my friend, we'll call it a wrap. Thank you for all the wisdom once again. And until next time, guys, Mike out.
Take care.
Thanks, Tom.